The Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, October 15th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio with my son, fellow investigator, researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Folks, you're about to hear 3 incredible hours of biased, yes, biased toward the truth, and uncensored news, information, and analysis, a breakdown of what's really taking place today. And I think this is so important for us to understand. We've got to understand what is taking place behind the scenes. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented, offered, provided in 3D. Looking beyond the headlines and, of course, the bylines, bring you the information, the news behind the news. For new listeners, thanks for checking in with us. Just love it when you do, as well as many requests for bumper stickers. We'll get those out. We're getting them out right now, actually, today and more tonight and tomorrow. Anyway, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on the internet at hagmanandhagmann.com. That's our new home base. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There, tune us in at the hagmanandhagmannreport.com. I just want to thank you, each and every one of you. You're our extended family, each and every one of you, for tuning into us and deliberately listening to us. It's important that you do. This show, portions of tonight's broadcast, is sponsored by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great-tasting, healthy snacks right to your door. Forget the snack aisles and vending machines and start snacking smarter with healthy, delicious treats. My new favorite now is, I'll tell you what. I'll just give you my. I'm kind of sticking to my old one, the pineapple rings. I mean, they're just so good. Oh, if you like pineapple, oh man. Anyway, support this show by ordering a free NatureBox sampler box at naturebox.com/CFP-radio. That's right, free NatureBox snacks are found at naturebox.com/CFP-radio. Joe, welcome tonight. It's great to have you. Oh, by the way, we're going to be going in a number of different directions tonight because of the nature of the news. But, Joe, it's great to have you kind of a full day in studio today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. We do have a lot to talk about, and we're going to get right into the news in a second here. I just want to take a minute first to promote what Augusto Perez is doing on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of October. That's Friday through Sunday.
Right. Yep.
Fire in the Valley, Reaping the Harvest. This will be held at the Valley Church, 2900 Lifeway, Caldwell, Idaho. 83605 is the zip code. Augusto Perez will be preaching and speaking. This is a conference that they're putting on to minister to people to help them experience the healing power that flows from heaven through this man of God. Expect and receive the miracle and supernatural transformation you are longing for. We talked with Augusto Perez today for a while, and he explained to us about the last conference he had and the powerful spiritual works that were done there. And he has this conference again coming up Friday, October 24th through Sunday, October 26th, and it will be held at the Valley Church, 2900 Lifeway, Caldwell, Idaho, 83605. Go to appearanceministries.com, and you will find all the information there about this event. A little slow on the draw there.
I am. I was. If I can just correct something here. The reason I was slow is I actually muted my microphone on purpose this time. Okay. The reason I was a little slow here, I wanted to correct that. It's theappearance.com. Okay, that's his website. It's www.theappearance.com. Folks, if you're anywhere near Caldwell, Idaho, or even if you aren't but could attend this, we're not going to be there, unfortunately. We've got a different commitment that weekend elsewhere. It's actually an investigative issue. But October 24th, 25th, 26th, that's a week from this Friday, by the way. 2 days from now, a week from 2 days from now. So if you're anywhere near Caldwell, Idaho, I would urge everyone to go there. We spoke with Augusto today at length, and folks, look, boy, the man is a godly man, and we shared certain things that stuck with me. Augusto Perez. By the way, he's developing an intercessory prayer team. If you're interested in being part of that, send him an email. Just go to theappearance.com and send him an email. Tell him you heard us talking about the intercessory prayer team, or IPT, on this show. But Augusto, I mean, I hung up from him and Joe with a pretty heavy heart. I do believe that the clock is running down as we speak, and he shared some things with us. There are, there are supernatural attacks being launched against certain people, whether it be Augusto himself, and he did relate some situations that he had last year and this year, and even of late, and of course Russ Tisdar and others. But if you think that this is just merely an earthly fight, you're mistaken. Or if you think it's just merely a supernatural fight only, you're mistaken. It's a combination of both.
A commentary on an Old Testament chapter from Matthew Henry states as follows: a righteous man, one honest man, one honest cause shall have enemies besetting it on every side. Many wicked men in confederacy against it run it down. One wicked man with so many various arts of mischief sets up upon a righteous man that he perfectly besets him. The kingdom was broken into parties and fractions and continually fighting and devouring one another. And it goes on to talk about how the righteous are surrounded and battered, tormented, abused, suffered. And that's what we are seeing happening on this earth. And it's getting worse, as many people say they feel the spiritual battle increasing.
You're exactly right. And we listened, when in studio, we listened to David Wilkerson, some of his prophetic pronouncements from 1973 and forward. Thank you for those who sent those links to us via email. Contrary to perhaps your belief, we do read our emails. It's just a little difficult to respond to them all. I want to get into something too right now while we have the opportunity. Yesterday we shared the Houston situation, the situation in Houston. Houston learns the consequences, really, and they're facing the consequences of having a lesbian activist as a mayor. I'll tell you right now, what is taking place in Houston is an outrageous overreach. It is a witch hunt, and it is going to have a chilling effect to pastors. Why am I bringing this up again today? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I stand firmly behind any pastor, any recipient of a subpoena, and if necessary, I'll hold the match and be the first in line. And this is a message to all of the pastors who have received the subpoenas. Now, I understand this subpoena is in relation to a civil action that's really unrelated or peripherally related to the issue of the.
What civil action is that?
It's the bathroom ordinance.
You're talking about the anti-discrimination ordinance.
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
So the only thing that stems from is the mayor and the city council drafting and voting that into law. so it doesn't stem from anything other than a overzealous local politicians. And InfoWars and many others had articles about this today. It talks about the truth of the matter, basically, that the city is demanding the pastors opposed to the law hand over communications with church members to determine what pastors have opposed the city or criticized the members of the leadership. The goal here is to get them to sit down and shut up, to harass them when issues like this come up in the future. The pastors and others will see what happened here and will remain silent. That from a Mr. Jared Woodiff, former Harris County GOP chairman.
Right. But yes, that's correct. But just to cut through the murky mireness of the Marxist, Leninist, or Marxist progressive left in this country, just to cut through their arguments, let me just say this. Whatever I can do, I will volunteer to be the first person in line with a match or a lighter to light a fire the subpoenas received by the pastors. We'll have the biggest fire in Houston, and I mean, I will drive down there personally and do this, and that's my commitment. As far as I'm concerned, this is an attempt to retaliate against the pastors, the preachers, the ministers who have spoken out against homosexuality. And it's interesting. I got an email today. Go ahead.
A listener, I think that I got this via email, came up with a great way to satisfy the city council ordinance, as well as not doing all that it asks, is that it should just copy and paste different Bible chapters and hand it in. Well, who's to say that's not what they talked about?
I'm more in favor of the visible the more visible program or the more visible platform of disobeying. I mean, if any time in this country, if any situation ever, civil disobedience is warranted, this is it, ladies and gentlemen. This is it. The pastors, in my view, must not comply with the subpoena process. In fact, I would urge all of the pastors and others share this view with this Sunday or Saturday or whenever they preach, to make the subject matter nothing but anti-homosexual topics. And you're right to an extent, and the listener was right to include the supporting biblical verses to call homosexuality what it is, an abomination before God. And once again, I think that we need to take this as not just a shot across our bow, but a shot into the hull of the boat. Because if this is allowed to stand, if this is allowed to continue, our civil rights and fully America as you have known and experienced it, it's over.
And I believe it already is over, but another thing they could do is send them to the NSA. I'm sure they have logs of recorded conversations of what went on. I mean, it is a personal vendetta. Obviously, this woman, lesbian mayor, included herself in 3 key words that were to be searched for through these 400 subpoenas that were going to yield 400 transcripts against homosexuality, gender identity, and the name of this mayor. But, what we're seeing here is the beginning of something that we're going to continue to see as long as Christianity, true Christianity, is alive in saying that, meaning as long as there are Christians and people gathering under the Lord's name. As long as that goes on in this country, we're going to continue to see every government agency continue to clamp down. We're going to see all the big media continue to marginalize, continue to poke fun at, we're going to see people leave because it's not popular. It's not good to be seen around those church people. The marginalization, the demonization, the attacks, it's going to get worse. I mean, this is a wave without a white cap compared to a tsunami wave that we're going to be getting sooner than later.
I agree, but again, I agree with what you said. But at this point, I'm very, very focused on doing whatever I personally can to advance the agenda against the activists, the homosexual activists who want to claim special rights and special treatment when none is deserved and when none is warranted. And I'm tired of the anti-Christian stance of the people, and I'm even more tired of the silence from the pulpits, the silence. And
but in this case is what we want, the silence, to the subpoena.
Yeah, again, and not just silence to the subpoenas, but a show of civil disobedience, exercising their First Amendment rights. And also, there's this myth of separation of church and state, and Greg Jackson had written just a brilliant chapter of his book about the different conservative comebacks to liberal lies about the separation of church and state. Just a brilliant expose about that. It's a lie, folks. It is a lie that is being perpetuated by the Marxist left and, of course, the Illuminati-controlled media. But having said all of that, the globalist elite-controlled media, but having said all of that, I think what is needed here is a show of solidarity, a show of civil disobedience, and say, look, we are not going to give in. And if we don't do this now, it's my view, if we don't put forth the effort needed to do this right now, to quash this overreach, this witch hunt, this retaliate, and this is a personal vendetta against the lesbian mayor, by the way, Parker, who has, I believe, according to an email, and I can't find the email, who stated that she's using this term, of course, to get what she wants as opposed to getting what the people want. So that should tell you a lot, but having said all of that...
What's that? Is a politician?
Well, but see, folks, one more thing, and I don't know if you heard about this. This is not just about the sermons. These subpoenas are not just limited to the sermons and any reference to the items of reference to the homosexuality or even the mayor herself. But they have been ordered to hand over all communications with members of their congregations regarding the non-discrimination law. So in other words, if the pastor, let's say I'm communicating with the pastor in Houston, and it may or may not be, and that's and we talk about the anti-discrimination law in effect in Houston. That is, by definition, a subpoenable that's subject to subpoena. So this goes far beyond just the sermons. This goes into private communications and utterances, and typings of the pastors. Now, folks, if that doesn't set you ablaze, I don't know what will. We have got to make a stand, and it's interesting too, because the very people who beg for tolerance or who cry tolerance or to say that they're tolerant, where's the tolerance here for religious freedoms of the people of Houston? It's non-existent. And I apologize. Well, no, I make no apologies for continuing this topic because I think it's an important one. Houston is the battleground right now for the First Amendment as it applies to freedom of religious speech. And it's interesting, isn't it interesting that David Wilkerson back in 1973 prophesized or predicted or stated that there would be a persecution never before of Christians here in the United States. And not only a persecution of Christians, but a persecution by Christians against other Christians, making the distinction between Christians who are following the social gospel versus those who are following the true gospel. And this is clearly part of it.
He talked about those who will, through the guise of religion, will seek social justice goals, environmental justice goals, that will take the name of the church and the name of the Lord and use it to create a super religious movement. And it will be contrary to what the true church is, and it will be used to destroy those who are part of the true church. And David Wilkerson, he had a lot of insight. He was a fantastic preacher. I don't know, last year and a half, I've pretty much watched every sermon that he has public, and he passed away in 2011. But I'd recommend anybody who has not listened to him to check him out. It's definitely worth it.
All right. One other thing, too, folks, if you haven't, or if you're not aware of this, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, which essentially is nothing more than the umbrella group of various other organizations, and their roots with respect to their leadership can be traced back to the Muslim Brotherhood and, of course, other terrorist organizations. They've launched a brand new website called Islamophobia.org. The people promoting hate of Islam and Muslims. Interestingly, our names do not appear on there, Joe and I. My name does not appear on there, either as an individual or as an organization. I don't know. Is it good? Does this mean that we're not doing our job?
I don't want to. I mean, well, no, I know what you're saying, but I don't want to be. I don't want to hate people.
Well, okay. I think
in
you're missing
general,
the point.
you know what I mean? No, I know what you're saying. I understand.
No, but see, what this is the reason I brought this up at this point in the show is because if you look at what's taking place in Houston right now with respect to the supposedly anti-lesbian or anti-homosexual agenda, which is not there, it's just baloney. And you look at this Islamophobia.org website under the control of the Council on American Islamic Relations, this is the exact same thing. This Islamophobia monitor. They are collecting names. They're collecting the names and information of organizations and individuals, and saying, okay, these are the people who are bigoted. They're racist. They're anti-Islam, of course. They're anti-Muslim, to the point of needing addressed and even a type of censorship. This is going to have the same effect because of the wealth behind the Council on American Islamic Relations and the cozy nature of CARE. And if you look at CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, their relationship with the 535 in D.C., as well as many within the executive branch. Look at the head of the Council on American Islamic Relations having this very intimate relationship with the executive branch, both in this so-called administration as well as the Bush administration. You'll understand that this is going to have a very, very chilling effect. This is taking names. This is creating a list. This is a method of silencing any critics of Islam. We have to fight back, folks, against this Islamophobia.org website. We have to fight back against the Council on American Islamic Relations. We have to educate people that Islam is nothing more than a political ideology that is disguised as a religious or a religion. It is a cultural ideology disguised as a religion. It is intolerant of other religions. It espouses Sharia or Sharia law, if you will, and to that end wants to impose Sharia law here in the United States. The Muslims, and perhaps this is why we're not listed, and you're right, Joe. I mean, I have no desire to be listed, certainly not on this list. I mean, we're on other lists, but this one here. But this is a new website. But the chilling effect that this will have, and it will have a number of different collateral effects that are not readily apparent. The chilling effect that this will have against those who speak out against Muslim terrorism, the connection between Islamic terrorism and even the governmental operations, which, by the way, I believe is one of the reasons we're off the radar, is because we understand that Islamic terrorism is more of a tool of the globalists rather than, it's controlled, I should say. Now, inherent, however, within Islam is that and even the Torah or the Quran talks about anyone who insults Muhammad should be beheaded. And obviously, I'm paraphrasing this, or anyone who insults the Prophet Muhammad must be dealt with. This is, to me, this is the beginning. We are seeing the groundwork laid here right now for an incredible, at least in my view, and the things that we have not seen ever before in this country, taking these two issues in tandem, taking the circumstances in Houston with respect to the mayor against the pastors and the creation of this Islamophobia.org website. What we're seeing right here is an active and very aggressive anti-Christian, at least anti-fundamentalist Christian practice. We cannot look at these, or to me, we should not look at these as two separate. I guess we could look at them as separate. However, they're part of the same spokes of the same larger wheel. And that larger wheel, of course, is to dilute and to destroy fundamental Christianity in this country, in the West, in the United States. So, having said that, I want to drive home that point with this lesbian mayor, Anise Parker, with her witch hunt, with her obvious attack, her and the city's attack against and that's what it is. I mean, they're using the legal system as a weapon against the pastors, much like Council on American Islamic Relations and key Muslims use the legal system against Christians and anyone who speaks out against violence espoused by the Orthodox Islamic faith or the true Islamic faith. You can see it all coming together. And it's accelerating progressively in progressive measures. It's accelerating. So if they are allowed, if the powers are allowed to get away with the subpoena process on the civil case in Houston, and if the Council on American Islamic Relations and this Islamophobia monitor is allowed to collect and publish names of supposed individuals and organizations who allegedly speak out against or speak the truth about the Muslim political and cultural, and we've lost our freedom of speech, and we've lost our rights, all of them. We will end up being silent. So I just wanted to bring those two. Those two I saw today, and I understand that look, I get it. I understand how far down this road we are. And I understand, too, that we've got other issues to talk about, but I think both of these issues are hugely important, and we have to keep our eyes on this. So, having said all of that, just keep your eyes on what's taking place. All right, other news that we've got to get into, and there's just so much, and Joe and I were talking about this earlier. There are certain things with this Ebola pandemic outbreak, whatever you want to call it, don't make sense that we're looking into, but this is extremely serious. You've got a second healthcare worker testing positive in Dallas. By the way, this healthcare worker did take a flight from Dallas to Cleveland, Ohio, and back to Dallas, and while she was symptomatic, by the way. Okay, so
not only that, we find out the first patient, was it named Duncan? He was not isolated. The conditions in the hospital were horrible, to where the nurses have spoken out saying there was no protocol, there was no system in place. They were not prepared, and it goes on from there to talk about how bad this actually was. Blood, vomit, and diarrhea-soaked materials piled to the ceiling. From this is a statement from the nurses union. It goes on to this article from the Houston CBS local says this: a Liberian Ebola patient was left in an open area of the Dallas emergency room for hours. Now, let me remind you, this is 2 days after he came in to the ER with 103-degree temperature and other symptoms, stating that he was recently traveled back from West Africa. They sent him home, and 2 days later he comes back, but it goes on to say that in the emergency room where he sat and people worked without protective gear, faced constantly changing protocols, according to the nation's largest nurses union. Among this was Nia Pham, 26, who has been hospitalized since Friday after catching Ebola while caring for Mr. Duncan, the first person diagnosed with the virus in the U.S. Public health authorities announced Wednesday that a second Texas Presbyterian hospital healthcare worker had tested positive for Ebola, raising more questions whether American hospitals and their staffs are adequately prepared to contain the virus.
Okay, stop right there for a second, because I got an email today. In fact, I got 2 emails from 2 different sources of the same letter. Okay, now think about what you just said, the second person being diagnosed with Ebola. Sent to the North Belton Middle School in Texas is the following, and there are no names associated with this other than the school, and I feel good because I got it from 2 different people, there are 2 different, same letter from 2 different sources, both listeners of this program in the Dallas area. So having said that, listen to what this letter said. This was a letter that was sent to the parents of children at North Belton Middle School. It says, "Dear parents, your child's health and safety is our top priority at North Belton Middle School. When issues of tension, we want to share that information with you. This afternoon, we were made aware that one of our students traveled on Frontier Airlines Flight 1143 from Cleveland to Dallas on Monday and attended classes on Tuesday and Wednesday." Now, folks, understand that this traveler, the woman that Joe just mentioned, was symptomatic, at least had a low-grade fever at the time of her travel on Flight 1143 from Cleveland to Dallas. Continuing on with the letter, it is important to know that individuals are not contagious until symptoms appear. Okay, so if that's the case, and this person was supposedly asymptomatic without symptoms, why send this letter? Is it to reassure people? Now I'll continue with the letter. According to statements from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, Frontier Airlines and Frontier Airlines, the passenger did not show any symptoms during the flight, and the risk of exposure for other passengers on the flight was low. Okay, now, the student who traveled on the flight, and I'm continuing with the letter here, is not currently showing any symptoms and is being monitored by the Bell County Health Department and the Texas Department of State Health Services. Now, these are two identical letters, side by side. Because of this, there's no imminent risk to your child. Then why are you sending this to the children, or the parents of the children of North Belton High School? North Belton Middle School. It seems to me you're sending a kind of a mixed message, are you not? Please know, I'm continuing here with the closing paragraph. Please know that the Belton ISD is in regular communication with the family and officials from the state and local health department. We will provide more information as it becomes available. And then for more information about the Ebola virus, please visit this link from the CDC. And, of course, they provide a link, once again, to two listeners, two letters, two emails, the same letter. And my question is, if this is not contagious and there's nothing to worry about, why the letter? Are we getting mixed messages here? Of course we are. Is this can this be described as mere incompetence, Joe? I don't think that maybe on the most basic local level, perhaps at the hospital level, perhaps at the city level, yeah, incompetence certainly. But at the higher levels, from the CDC to the executive branch, I will not describe incompetence. I do believe that there is a totally different agenda here at play. And the effect, the effect on the airlines, if you look at the Drudgery Report, for example, you'll see that the airline stocks are tanking. You'll see that the economy, or the economic effect that this is having, even the fear factor portion of this is, and people will say, well, you have to put this in perspective. Well, look how many people, you had, 4 million die from the flu, from influenza or influenza-related problems here within the last 12 months, and you're worried about, 2 or 3 or 80 or 90 potential victims of Ebola. Your chances of getting in there are relatively slim. My contention is, no, I think that there's something else going on here. I think not only is the virus, based on the research I've done and Joe's done, and I think I can speak for Joe, I believe that the virus, number one, Ebola virus, likely has and is mutating or has mutated. And number two is certainly, you can certainly get it, certainly been airborne, or it's airborne. And I'm not going to parse words with respect to airborne and aerosolized or whatever, but you know what I mean. I'm talking about being in the same room with someone, and it's contagious in that fashion.
It seems to have a very selective infection rate.
Well, you mentioned something today, Joe, about the doctor, the doctor that was flown back to the U.S.
I came across some information on a forum about the doctor who was flown, the U.S. doctor who was flown to Atlanta Hospital who recovered from Ebola. He donated blood to the 3 people who've been treated in the U.S. for the Ebola and have survived. He did not donate blood to Mr. Duncan, passed away. And the interesting thing about this is, one, why didn't he, there's no rhyme or reason as to why he donated, but none of the articles mentioned what type of blood he had, which, is that important? Maybe. Do we know that they make diseases and, bioweapon labs that specifically target certain genders and certain races and ethnicities? Yes, they do. So, is it important? Well, I would just like to know what kind of blood, the victims had and the donor had. I mean, is that really a hard thing to ask? And it wouldn't be that big of a deal, except why is it exempt from every article from every news agency you find? Just doesn't sit right with me. How this lady was infected. We learn about Mr. Duncan's family who was with him, and his girlfriend or wife, whatever it was, that he had. They're still being monitored, but none of them are showing any signs of having Ebola. Yet a nurse wearing a full hazmat suit gets infected from this Duncan. It's very strange, and then
it's not
inconsistencies pile up.
Right. It's our collective belief here, based on our research, that the real intent or the real threat to us right now. Yes, Ebola is dangerous. Yes, Ebola is a threat. Yes, it is just as Greg Evenson pointed out, just as Steve Quayle pointed out, just as others on our program have pointed out, this is a threat to every living person in our country and in the West and the entire planet. But what is this? What's the intent of this? What is the intent? Let's take this a step further. Kitchen table. Right. We're sitting around here at the kitchen table discussing this. Let's take this a step further.
Well, Steve or somebody who was on with him made the point, if you wanted to spread a pandemic that was going to kill a large amount of people, you could do so much more efficiently with a different virus or disease than Ebola.
Correct. That's correct. Behind this, perhaps, we do have, regardless of the damage done by the Affordable Care Act, we still have a better healthcare system, for example, than Western Africa. We do have better sanitation, obviously, than that country, and even a lot of places in Europe. So what's really the real threat here, or perhaps an alternative or even a concurrent agenda behind this? Let's look out of the box a little bit. Is it possible that in addition to the threat of Ebola, the Ebola virus itself, is it possible that because of programs like this and Alex Jones and others who are talking about the real truth behind this, is it possible that they could be using this to advance the agenda to crash the market, to further destroy the economy? Is it possible that they could be using this as a cover to escalate their activities in the Middle East? When I say there, I'm talking about the true power brokers. Well, let's look at the bigger picture, the broader picture. Is it possible that current with this outbreak, that they could very well say, well, we need to control the misinformation about Ebola. There's so much misinformation about it. It's causing panics, and it's adversely affecting our country, the state of our economy, for example. Now, the planes are empty. They're not flying. The malls are empty. The young people are not going to school. Just that letter from the middle school in Texas. I wonder what the absentee rate will be over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to need to clamp down on the internet, and especially those people who provide misinformation or information contrary to the CDC, and shut them down.
I don't know if they're really in a position to do that with all the misinformation, the double talk, say one thing, do another that we see going on between the White House and the CDC. I think if they really tried to stifle any alternative media from talking, that it would create a much worse situation than Ebola.
Couldn't that be part and parcel to the larger agenda, thinking outside of the box?
Well, yeah,
and
conditioning.
Right.
I mean, what, are they conditioning for a mass vaccination run? Are they conditioning for a quarantine, martial law run, or run up to the real thing, using the Ebola pandemic as a reason to implement some sort of martial law? Then here comes the bank holiday or whatever is coming. The Ebola serving as the pretext to get troops in place. I mean,
yeah, that's exactly what I was getting.
There's no extent to the level of evil that is behind our government. I'm not saying that naming anyone individually, but there obviously is an evil behind our government that knows no limits. And I don't know. I mean, but what I would just urge people to do is to, stay calm, pray about this, and, just see how this plays out. I mean, I wouldn't start to get worried, and it would take a lot. We'd have to have, more than 10 cases here locally before I would start to not go to the store or change my, my habits. Not that I'm flying around or going out in public a lot, but I don't know. It seems like a lot of attention, a lot of fear. Yes, a lot of people in Africa have lost their lives, but here we had one person die who came from Africa. We've had 3 people survive who've been treated here, who were flown here, and now we have 2 more infected for sure, publicly admitted at least, and we'll see what happens with them. It's still isolated to the Dallas area, aside from what damage this traveling nurse might have done.
Well, no, you've got people who are not. It's not being reported in the mainstream media. People under medical surveillance in other parts of the country. You know that. We talked about that earlier. But just think about this: Ebola is a retrovirus, so the genetic material is really a single-stranded RNA, meaning that it could be it's much more prone to mutations, as I mentioned earlier. So, having said all of that, if you look at the potential pandemic and consider the mutations part of it, I think that we're in for some real trouble. And it's interesting because there was one. I received some information where it's actually there's definitely a 2 to 21 day incubation period. However, it could be as long as double that amount, depending on this particular mutation strain. If I was reading this correctly. Now, having said all of that, I go back to the core issue here, or the core statement talking about this, Ebola. Can you have this level of incompetence? Can you imagine this level of incompetence at the executive branch at CDC and throughout all of the top? Today was the first day that Obama actually supposedly had a cabinet level meeting about this. So to me, that either shows some level of pre-planning or knowledge about this issue, or abject incompetence, and I don't believe it's the latter. I believe that there's something else going on here. Does that make me a conspiracy theorist? No, I would say more of an analyst with respect to the actions of the CDC and the executive branch, and even the legislative branch. But if you think you're safe from this, wherever you might sit, whether it be in the UK or in the US, you're not. So we need to prepare. But we also have to look at the collateral effects of this. And the collateral effects might even be the primary intent, which I mentioned to be to crash the markets, to take out to escalate the war, in the Middle East, take over Syria, to martial law, essential martial law, or practical martial law, which could just be travel restrictions, as well as other types of restrictions. So,
yeah, when though? They won't even implement travel restrictions for the disease-ridden countries that this is coming from.
Because that's who they want to keep out. That's not who they want to control. Obviously, it would not be to their benefit, and that's why. See, I guess that's why this to me, looking at this and just from a larger perspective, which I like to do, to me, there are so many things that don't make that have no logic to them. Why leave open the flights? I heard a statement where I don't know whether it was the head of the CDC or who. It was somebody from the CDC saying, "Well, this thing just got ahead of us." With the medical surveillance that is in place on regular viral, I mean, you look at the flu, look at the influenza, look at H1N1, look at the medical surveillance mechanisms they have in place, and you're telling me that this got ahead of you? This being a level 4 threat, it's a big deal.
Well, I heard that it would be potentially racist to discrimination to shut down the flights. Couldn't tell you where that came from, but it was definitely the news, mainstream news.
Well, yeah, it's obviously it's racist to even talk about this, and it's insane when you put it in that perspective. But this is one of the most virulent L4 pathogens on the face of the planet, and if it mutates, and I believe it is, in a much more effectively deadly direction, then what we're going to see is an uncontrollable pandemic. Just imagine The Stand on steroids, movie The Stand, or the book The Stand, if you want to go to the book. But it's statistics are funny things, by the way, and you're going to see all sorts of statistics out there in terms of your likelihood to track Ebola and so on. When statistics stop being relevant is when you or a loved one become one. That's right. When they stop being relevant, it is when you or a loved one becomes one. For example, it's really, chances of being killed in a terrorist attack are much less than being in a car accident, of course, until you're in that cafe and that bomb goes off. Okay? Then a little bit differently. That's what I'm saying. But I don't. What I'm seeing here too, and this is nothing. This is what I'm about to say now is based on nothing that I've read, seen, heard, or researched. Although I did mention this city earlier, I've got a real issue. Something is bothering me, and I mentioned to Joe, and I just want to put this as a place marker in time in the show. I mentioned to Joe earlier today when we were doing research for the night show. I've got a really bad feeling about Cleveland, Ohio. I just don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. Do you ever just have one of those gut feelings about something or someplace? Well, Cleveland, Ohio. It's not to say anything is going to happen there. It's not to say I'm right. It's not to say anything except, that just for the last week or so, I've had this bad feeling about something taking place in Cleveland. And again, it could be nothing at all, and it could be just my wild imagination running amok. But I just want to mention that as a place marker here on the 15th day of October, 2014.
Seeing that Cleveland's right down the road, pretty much, we should go investigate. No, but in all seriousness here, we have Obama canceled the political travel amid the Ebola shortcomings, as it's called. We have calls for the resignation of the head of the Center for Disease Control. And about him, Tom Friedman, you know what his history in politics was? He was a left-wing community organizer in 2012. And his role as a community organizer was first reported in the New York Times in a profile. The philosophy major reportedly worked on the Mississippi Delta, and it goes on from there to Biden also went to a new AG. A positive attitude is a self-fulfilling prophecy. A positive attitude won't solve all your problems, but it will annoy enough people to make it worth your effort. Some of the quotes he is on record saying, but I just find it interesting that, the lack of experience. Does anybody know what they're doing? Is it incompetence, like you said? Is it a lack of leadership, or is it a incompetence mixed with some very precise, timely appearances of incompetence?
My vote is for not incompetence. I see an evil agenda at play here, folks. I really do. And I had mentioned this earlier in the week, what we're facing, and I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Just a couple of minutes here. If we look at what we're facing, this multidimensionality of what we're facing. When you were absent on Monday, Joe, from the program, I had talked during the third hour, I think it was, about the fourth dimension, about the spirit attacks. And Augusto Perez, we had a great conversation with him earlier today. He had talked about the spiritual attacks and what's going on in things that we cannot see. Well, if we look at this, everything that's taking place right now, there are forces, and I'll just say this: there are forces who some will call the elite, the globalist elite, the Illuminati, the invisible hand, whatever you want to call them. Folks, they are using science, they're using technology, they're using governmental and supernatural forces right now to maintain their control of the present and to advance their plan to rule in the future. This is kind of the bottom line, what everything is all about. This is what everything is all about. It is absolutely critical, in my view, that everyone understands the multidimensional nature of this particular battle in which we are engaged. And again, I talked about this on Monday during the third hour.
An example of that is the materialist mentality and the TV entertainment mentality that has rocked America to sleep, and really out of their intelligence.
Well, that's very true. And I had made reference, by the way, and thanks for that, but I had made reference to the fourth dimension on Monday. And it's extremely practical as well as physical, but the battle in which we are engaged, and I believe if you look at this multidimensional war, you're looking at forces from what scientists would call the fourth dimension. A historical event, and I'm citing Paul McGuire here as well during one of his recent appearances on our program, a historical event that illustrated the interrelationship between political, economic, scientific, educational, cultural, and military forces and supernatural forces from an unseen dimension. And he had talked about this, I think it was the last program or the program before that. He had talked about this would be the rise of Hitler in the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. And I know people who hear the name Hitler in a conversation immediately tune out. But Hitler, if you study Hitler and the Third Reich, the Nazi movement, the National Socialist movement, Hitler was a master of psychological propaganda. And folks, isn't this what we're seeing right now? A lot of psychological propaganda. But he was a master of that, psychological propaganda, motivation, and persuasion. He used all of that, to write his book, Mein Kampf. And, of course, Mein Kampf translates into My Struggle when he was imprisoned. But Hitler, Goebbels, and their occult advisors, and this is something that I didn't mention on Monday, I want to mention now. They used the science of persuasion and mind control in order to rally and mobilize the German people at that time. Now compare this, folks, to where we are today. Nazi propaganda included movies, it included posters, art, radio, cartoons, books, pamphlets. I could go on and on and on. Public speaking, the press. If Hitler was alive today, Goebbels, as well as all of the supporters therein, certainly they would use the full range of the internet, including all social media, Twitter, Facebook, blogs, websites, and such, YouTube's, podcasting like we do, and so on. Now, think about this and compare where we are today to the days of Hitler pre-World War II, but also consider the multidimensionality of both. There's an author wrote a book, and I cannot pronounce this author's name, but the book is called Analysis of Nazi Propaganda, a Behavioral Study. This is back in a number of years ago. Nazi propaganda used content, imagery, style, and other creative components, which employed behavioral psychology and targeted. And what they did was they targeted key cognitive and psychological drivers. And we often say that belief is the driver of action. Well, in this case, this propaganda really tweaked that psychology, that psychological driver in men and women, along with their cognitive biases in the German population. And don't we have the same cognitive biases today? Similar? I mean, when I'm talking about it, everyone has cognitive biases, normalcy biases, and go on. But all of these practices were designated to instigate and create behavioral cues that triggered bias responses and affect and transform belief. So cognitive biases are triggered and activated by evolved mental behavior created by new situations where rapid decisions and survival are absolutely required. Are we not seeing this perhaps play out with the Ebola situation? And artificial stimulation can be manipulated to produce specific responses in the population that's being targeted. Could we very well be being targeted by this? We'll say the Ebola crisis. If you look at the psychological component used by Hitler, the propaganda, and compare it to today. Now, Nazi propaganda was used to manipulate the entire nation of Germany, and it could be used to manipulate other nations in specific racial, ethnic, and age demographic groups. So, having said that, every national, racial, political, or even religious group has its own set of psychological issues, or beliefs, or myths, or whatever you want to call them, perceptions, I suppose, that can be manipulated. The Nazi propaganda had really a threefold purpose, and Paul McGuire spoke and even wrote about this in his book, A Prophecy of the Future of America. First was the deification of Hitler, and making him a messiah figure. The second was defining and demonizing his enemies and justifying their treatment. And thirdly, the third propaganda purpose was to rally, energize, and mobilize the masses to follow Hitler and the Nazis. Now, why do I bring this up? Because historically, the very same process that they use is now in use to create this messianic-like cult of our own political leaders. And as the elections are coming up, and the election cheerleaders, whether it be on the left or the right, whether I'm talking about Obama, or Rush Limbaugh, or Sean Hannity, or I'm talking about Tom Hartman and Chris Matthews and Rachel Maddow, it doesn't matter. We are being subjected to the same process used to create messianic-like cult and political leaders and leadership. And what is being used against us, against us, I suppose, is visual propaganda, which bathes, for example, potential political candidates, leaders already, and we've seen this in use with Obama. It bathed them in this mystical aura of messianic type of this messianic aura, if you will. If you remember, and I know again we're getting past the hour here, but if you remember Oprah Winfrey talking about Obama and being on national television saying Obama is the one, and how many people followed Oprah Winfrey, that message that was being sent out to a very, very precise, very specific demographic group of people. So the reason I mention all of this, and you can go back to the pre-war Germany, in fact, during the war, during World War II, where you could see posters of Hitler where he is almost showered by this light around him, creating like a halo effect, if you will. That technique is being used today in our political arena, whether it be Republican or Democrat. Some of the posters, by the way, are pictures. You'll see certain candidates with. If you look very closely, you'll see, let's say, birds in the pictures, a wreath of flowers, and so on. But what I'm talking about is a science, is a behavioral science that's called the halo effect. And you can search this on the internet. And it's being used by all the major political players, but it's being used specifically by the globalists to trigger our deep emotional need and to propagandize the larger agenda here, or to assist and to facilitate the end game here. And I will end with this. Paul McGuire speaks of, in his book, A Prophecy of the Future of America, he does speak of this. The bandwagon effect, meaning that people will follow a leader because they see other people following that leader. Folks, the Satan servants will come as angels of light, and they will deceive people who are not really rooted in the Word of God. So I just want to mention this. If you're being led by your emotions, and believe me, I am, I continue to be. I try not to be. But you can hear it in my voice. You can hear it in my words sometimes. But we have to be rooted in the Word. And rather than being led by emotions, feelings, and even that bandwagon effect I mentioned, we have to be rooted in the Word. And when I was doing research at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 to 15 apply here, where Paul warns people not to be false apostles or follow people in this bandwagon effect. So, having said all of that, this multidimensional nature of the war in which we are fighting, I don't know if this made sense, but this is a multidimensional battle, and science, technology, governmental, supernatural forces are in fact being used to maintain the government. They're being used to maintain control over the population. So we have to break free from that. That's why, whether we're talking, well, especially when we're talking about national events like Ebola, we have got to understand and the multidimensional nature of the fight which we are battling. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully somebody got the message out there, and hopefully that did make sense.
Were you speaking English? No, it did make a lot of sense.
Okay. So,
very good. With that, let's take the top of the hour break right now. We're going to come back with more news. We're going to be taking phone calls probably, halfway through the next hour?
Let's roll the phones.
I did. Bring my dad back. He said, let's just open the phones for the whole show. I said, I don't know. We have a lot of news we should hit. And he said, all right. So halfway through the next hour, we will be taking your calls.
You're being censored. You're being muzzled, folks.
Yep. Yes, you are. But you will have your time to talk. We'll be right back after these short messages. Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of this Wednesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking your phone calls here in just a few minutes. First, we're going to hit some headlines pertaining to Ebola and a few other things. I don't know, Dad, if you saw this, but what the UN said yesterday. The UN made a statement, 60 days to beat Ebola, United Nations warns. If a deadly outbreak cannot be reined in by Christmas, then the UN says there is no plan in place and it could be overwhelmed. As opposed to the plan they're...
Can we say Cloward Piven? We'll look at the strategic results, or look at the results from the hands-off approach taken by the people in power. Oh, what did you just say? What word did you say? Overwhelmed? Overrun? Regardless, that's the
overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. And if you look back at the Cloward Piven template, isn't that in a different venue or different arena, different area, section, different time period as well? Isn't that their objective, to overwhelm, overrun the system? In their case, it was different, of course, than today, but same effect, same playbook, different targets. Only the targets have changed in this case. So, seriously, if you look at what's taking place, you've got dangerous, multifaceted danger based on Ebola itself. But
yeah, there's a danger just from the media hype. If they spin a story the wrong way, you read the letters from the schools in the local Dallas area. If they wanted to spin a story the wrong way, and I was listening to the satellite radio on the way here, and I think it was Shepard Smith came on right when I got in the car, and he was very calm, and he said, this is not an outbreak or a pandemic. It's not a crisis in America yet.
Well, that's my question.
And he was
in
very...
11, by January, are we going to be saying the same words in January?
I hope not, but
no,
I would say no.
No. Wait a second. I think you missed.
I would say no.
So, I think you misheard what I said.
What he said.
Okay.
Well, are we going to be saying the same thing in January?
Yeah, that there's no problem, nothing is wrong, this is not a pandemic. Are we going to be saying that in January?
I would say yes, and I mean, Lord knows I've been wrong about a lot of things, so this would just be another. If I am wrong, it would be nothing new. But I don't know. Maybe, like I said, we live in a country that still has a healthcare system that's on par with the rest of the world. Sanitation, above most of the world. And how long has this Ebola pandemic been going on in West Africa?
But don't you find the timing of the least bit interesting? Since you mentioned that, how long has it been going on?
The election?
Well, the election, the travel, the season. People travel during the holidays. You are coming into the influenza time of year. What better way to slip a lethal L4 level virus into the equation and to change the entire equation than to the timing right now. So think about this. Consider you have to do the math. I believe. I don't believe that we don't need to get Ebola or to be infected by Ebola to have it, or Ebola doesn't have to affect people for there to be very large problems in this country.
I agree.
Okay. If you look at, again, take a few steps back, look at the larger situation. Look at the stock market as one example. When this first became a domestic issue, that is an issue in the U.S., to today, the Dow, dropped, I think, total of 1,500 points. And that's just with two Americans or two Americans and Duncan, if you want to throw that in there, confirmed infected so far. So my question is, how many people would have to actually be diagnosed for people just to stop going to work, going to school, flying, traveling? Just imagine, for example, if 1,000 people, or no, I wouldn't even say 1,000, if 100 people were infected.
All it would take, is 100 people in geographically targeted locations and a media hype that is placating to public fears. And very quickly you would see the level of uncertainty and the panic of many people.
I believe that panic is already, the stage has been set for the panic. The question now is how far will the panic spread and how deeply will the panic become rooted? For example, let's just say all of a sudden tomorrow or next week or next month, we're informed that, for example, there's 100 people in 5 different states, or even 50 people in 5 different states. Would sporting events still take place, or would the attendance be the same in sporting events? Or how about school? Or how about shopping malls? Or how about airlines, the flying tin cans? So now, having said that, I do not, and I mean this sincerely, I do not want to minimize the threat of Ebola. I believe that this is, in fact, a very dangerous, mutating, and airborne I believe it's very serious and deadly. But I also believe, and you mentioned this earlier, Joe, and folks, listeners to this program, if you want to do your homework on this, you had mentioned. Let me find it here. The Kanema bioweapons laboratory, and George Soros, the Open Society, and the connection between George Soros and Bill Gates to what's going on.
Absolutely. They both Soros through the Open Society funded a lab that was under investigation, the Weapons 4 Biolab, and Ebola was one of the specialties there. Now there was an investigation launched that shut down this lab as well as the lab at Tulane University, and the spokesman for the World Health Organization that deals with these investigations through the media died in the plane crash in Ukraine.
Okay, so we look at that. Is that a coincidence? And if you look at all of the dead microbiologists and their specialties about these viruses, and if you have read Ken Ellebeck's book, I have it right here, Biohazard, the chilling true story of the largest covert biological weapons program in the world, told from inside by the man who ran it. If you have read this book, he talks about the Russian side of things, where Ebola, the Ebola virus, they were weaponizing or attempting to weaponize, or in the process of weaponizing and aerosolizing and making Ebola airborne. Okay, and
of course, there a movie outbreak that was focused on Ebola virus breaking out in the U.S. I don't know if that title is correct. Disease movies were never one of my things, but there was I remember, I think it had Dennis Hoffman in it, and I don't remember what the female's name was, but I just remember their big yellow suits and those fake plastic tunnels that they'd set up. It was Ebola, I believe, was the actual disease that they were using in the movie. I'm going to have to do some research. But here's something I found interesting. Liberia, this is from the Washington Post from today, I'm sorry. Liberia, from the Liberian Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, they're saying that they're going to need 79,940 more body bags over the next 6 months as the country is struggling with Ebola, a crippling Ebola epidemic. This says the country projects a gap, not only body bags, but also protective suits, where they estimate they'll need 989, almost 990,000. This is dated October 10th. The ministry situation report shows, among other things, 2,425 deaths so far from Ebola, of whom 95 have been healthcare workers in Liberia alone. Now, so they're saying they're going to need 80,000 body bags within the next 6 months. I don't know who's doing the math for all this stuff, but when you say there's 9,000 people infected, 4,500 have died, and that leads to a 70 to 80% death rate, that's not correct.
It's Common Core math, and that's why.
I thought about that. Even Common Core math isn't that far off. And you see these here, 2,425 deaths so far. And I'm looking, I still haven't come across the figures of when the first death was recorded and how long that is until this article was written. But so you have 2,500 deaths roughly, and you're asking for 80,000 body bags? It's a little high. Somebody's not too optimistic.
Yeah, so almost 1 million body bags. And just to be clear, and I had mentioned this in earlier...
80,000 body bags.
Oh, 80. Okay, I'm sorry.
Almost 1 million of the hazmat suits.
The hazmat. Okay, I got you. All right. Well, it's interesting because folks understand, too, there are different strains of Ebola. And I have not seen this distinction made in the media, or at least not with any type of definite, with any specificity. But here's the deal. And Ellebeck talks about this in his book. The first recorded outbreak of, I'll say Ebola, it happened back in 1967 in Marburg, Germany. It's an old university town just north of Frankfurt, I don't know, by about 50 miles. 1967. And what happened was an animal keeper died 2 weeks after he contracted this mysterious illness from green monkeys sent to this lab from Central Africa. The lab was culturing vaccine from kidney cells extracted from the monkeys. Now, I won't go into details, but other workers around this guy fell sick, and similar cases were reported at laboratories in Frankfurt and Belgrade, both which had received multiple shiploads of these monkeys from Central Africa. So 24 lab techs came down with this unknown disease, along with 6 nurses caring for them. Boy, does this sound familiar? Now, of 31 people infected, 7 died. And it was an undiagnosed outbreak. The horror behind the deaths, and they were explained in detail in Ken Alabek's book, the virus appeared to liquefy body organs, and people bled out through capillaries and openings everywhere. But anyway, following the tradition, the virus was named after the place where it was first identified. Hence, we have now Ebola Marburg. And so understand that there are different strains, one of which is Ebola Marburg, another is Ebola Zaire, which is located, well, it's now the Democratic Republic of Congo. So that one I think claimed 400 and some people. But that virus was responsible for the outbreak called Ebola itself, after the site where it was isolated, that being the Ebola River in Zaire, which is now the Congo. So hopefully you followed that. But the bottom line, that's a different strain. So you've got Ebola Marburg, Ebola Zaire, and Steve Quayle went over this. Ebola struck again in the same area back in 1995. It's important to note, at least in my view, that these various viruses, the viruses that are isolated in Africa, differ slightly in genetic composition from the strain found in Germany, for example, but they're closely related. If you look at them under an electron microscope, they seem to proliferate by shooting out these tiny filament-like threads, like the lines. Just think about throwing a line, your fishing line, into a lake or something. So the threads actually are bent at the top, kind of like little hooks. And if you have a puppy or something and you study hookworms, that's kind of what they look like. And it's so these are different. Ebola were deemed to be to belong to a totally different family of viral organisms. And as Steve Quayle had mentioned, and others, we're talking about filoviruses or filoviruses. So we don't know a lot about filoviruses, where these came from, and how they are transmitted to humans. But now today, folks, we're finding out. I mean, but the important distinction here, the only distinction I want to make is to understand that we're talking about different strains of this filovirus and potentially new strains. So when the CDC comes out and says, well, you can't catch Ebola Marburg or Ebola Zaire, you have to have direct physical contact, they have no clue what they're talking about, at least in my view and my research, based on my research, because we're talking about mutating viruses, if that makes sense.
And looking here, what I can gather from the World Health Organization's own data, there was a Ebola outbreak that started in August of 2012 in Uganda. That's the first I see Ebola since 2010 on the World Health Organization website. From there, it went to Sierra Leone, Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone in August 14, and to the Congo it went. And between the 4th and 5th of October 2012, it says end of Ebola outbreak in Uganda. After about 30 cases, maybe.
And that was in 2012. Right.
Right.
Okay.
And then you see the Ebola outbreak in Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is in October of 2012 still.
The home of Ebola Zaire.
And Ebola in Uganda. And then it continues to span out to Guinea, to Niger, and to Liberia. The first case in Liberia I find is March 30th, 2014, of Ebola virus. So we're looking at over 6 months since the first case, and they have 2,500 dead. So what makes them think they're going to need roughly, what would that be?
A lot.
2,000%? I mean, what, 2,500 versus 80,000? 2,500 in a span more than probably 7 months of deaths, versus they're estimating they're going to need 80,000 body bags in the next 6 months.
Well,
like I said, who's doing the math?
Well, the only thing I can think of is when you look at the bioterrorism done by countries at the country level. For example, Russia, and going back to Ken Allebeck, or even here in the United States, citing what Ken Allebeck has said, has written, has documented. At the height of the U.S. the offensive biological weapons program, our scientists were developing armaments that could be at least countered by antibiotics or vaccines. And this is not being done out of concern for protecting their own troops and civilians from potential accidents. Now, the Russian government, under the Soviet government, they decided that the best agents, now we're going back before the fall of the Soviet Union, so keep this in the back of your mind. They decided that the best agents were those for which there was no known cure. And that shaped the entire course of their program and thrust the Soviets into a never-ending race against the medical profession, because they would come out with something and the medical would counter it with some type of vaccine or some type of antidote. So every time a new treatment or vaccine came to light somewhere, they went back to their labs trying to figure out how to circumvent the vaccine or antidote or whatever it might have been. But trafficking in these viruses in the name of scientific research, the Soviets purchased strains from university laboratories and biotech firms from around the world without any problem whatsoever. And this is where, what you'd mentioned, the Soros-related, Open Society-related Kanema biolab comes into play. I'm not saying that they were involved in this. I'm saying that there are biolabs that were messing with these viruses. So having said that, for example, representatives of the Soviet Union and the scientific trade organizations based in Europe, in Africa, and Asia, and Latin America, all of these, in the United States, they were obtaining viruses, including viruses that caused the hemorrhagic fever. Marburg was picked up from Germany and transported. The viruses were transported to different countries. So even the larger question at this is, perhaps this is an artifact or some sort of offshoot of a bioweapons program gone rogue. What better way than what better way would population control? And you just go back to the Georgia Guidestones, the Bill and Melinda Gates, and how vaccines can effectively terminate much of our population.
Well, yes, the vaccines. You remember a report out of Liberia when this Ebola stuff really started hitting the news, that the local Liberian people said that the disease was a hoax, and the vaccine was what actually were making people sick. These were from patients, people who were on the ground, citizens of Liberia, who were saying this. There was actually, I think, one Liberian man who was shot trying to run across the border to a neighboring country from Liberia. And this was due to the, they don't want to spread the disease any further than it has to go. But if it really was a matter of population control, they could have released something into the atmosphere with an incubation period of, 14 to 28 days, giving themselves all the cure, and went into hiding for enough time for all of us to drop dead before we even knew it happened. So again, we have to ask, what is the purpose of this?
All of these good questions. All of these excellent questions, and for those who are awake paying attention to what Joe said, these are legitimate questions, and who's asking them in the press? What we're seeing in the press right now going back to what I referenced earlier with respect to the propaganda machine, the deification of our leadership, it's the same deal. We're not being told the whole story. When have you seen?
Well, I got an answer to that. Yesterday there was a report that came out. White House pool reporters test own news distribution system. White House journalists are creating an alternative system for distributing their media pool reports in response to the Obama administration's involvement of approving and disapproving certain content in official reports. So what they are doing, the White House, the forum was set up by the White House Correspondents Association, which negotiates with the White House press staff over access for journalists. The pool reports...
So just so I'm clear on this, because I want to make sure the listeners are clear on this. What you're saying is they have to follow the official pool, the White House route of communications, or they're cut off. They don't get anything. So is that what you're saying?
Pre-approved questions, yeah, or they're cut out. And it goes on to say that summaries of the president's public appearances that go to the news media at large and are used in countless news stories are filed by a rotating group of journalists whose work is intended to be free of content changes by the White House. The pooled journalists, however, must submit their reports to the White House press office when it distributes them via email, before they distribute them via email to hundreds of news sites. The White House maintains a list of the recipients. Reporters have complained that the Obama White House exploits its role as distributor to demand changes in pool reports, that the press office has delayed or refused to distribute some reports until they are amended to the official's satisfaction. So the president...
Wow.
They call this the White House reporting using Google Groups, the digital service that allows registered users to receive and send information within closed circles. In an early test of the supplemental system, journalists shared pool information about President Obama's trip to Chicago this month. The system has been used for advisories, such as where the pool is assembling, when another pool report will be issued, or whether a correction is in the works. But nearly all 90 journalists working for the print media are part of Google Group distribution, a small fraction of the estimated 8,000 people, agencies, and organizations that receive the official pool report sent out by the White House. The goal is to create an independent reporting system for print and online recipients. TV, radio reporters already have these systems, but they are managing the content. Selective distribution of the news.
Now the question is this an artifact of the Ebola reporting, or is this something different, or is this? I know it involves and entails the Ebola reporting or reporting on Ebola, but is this an artifact of that or a consequence of the Ebola reporting? And you don't have to answer that. That's just a rhetorical question.
No, I'd say no. This is something that's been ongoing. This is what's the press secretary's name? The current one, not the current. Is it Parsons?
Young. Yeah, perhaps. I honestly, I should know. I see his face.
Josh Earnest. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
But okay, somebody named Parsons here. I don't know who this guy is. He says it's our responsibility as reporters to make sure that the reports are accurate, and though no one should ever assume that the White House is approving or disapproving of the content in any pool.
Well, that's just bull hockey, right? Bullpucky stuff. Okay.
Right. The Correspondents Association was thinking about hiring outside help to get a more diverse topic list out there, or talking point list. But the White House declined it, and also declined to comment on this story as well. But yeah, the White House is approving and disapproving what questions will be asked. And I know, a lot of times in the press conferences with the reporters that are there with the president, they'll select a journalist to ask the first question. Sometimes they'll ask what the first question is going to be. But to take the press releases or press reports and to sit there and I don't like this question. We're not going to include this.
And that's what's happening. Yeah. I know. Well, like what I like to do is, again, look at the larger picture, Joe. Do you believe that we have a choice in what we read and what we hear and watch by changing channels or by switching newspapers, looking at different various websites. I don't believe that at all. And I think, folks, if people really understood, and I know our audience does, but if the main population really understood that information being controlled by the captured corporate media, it's not a conspiracy theory propagated by the paranoid masses like us, supposedly. People are just unaware that the media has never been more consolidated and controlled than it is today. There's merely the illusion, folks, of choice in the news sources. And this applies whether it's the press pool or whatever. It comes down to this.
Yeah,
Think
the
about
mainstream
this.
media.
Yeah.
Because there's never been more alternative choices either. That's right.
Well, right. But think about what we watch on television and the print copies of newspapers and magazines, and regardless. In 1983, that would be 31 years ago, about 50 corporations owned the majority or 90% of American media. Think about that. So you got 50 corporations. There was some diversity there in 1983. Today, 6 corporations own 90% of what we read, watch, and hear. And I'll tell you, the 6 are GE, Viacom, CBS, News Corp, Disney, and Time Warner. So do we really have a choice? In certainly in the most perfect of circumstances, one might argue this wouldn't be a problem. But to disseminate the truth, to get a different perspective, we don't have the illusion, or we don't have a choice. We just have the illusion of choice by changing channels.
Well, you said it best in the beginning of the show, and I'm looking for not the quote you used, but something that was similar. It's not the beliefs or truth that is the issue. It is the perception of those beliefs or truths.
And that's right, and how that perception is being managed by the mass media, which is controlled by the global elite. This is what we have to. So we have to toss into the equation of this Ebola situation the perception of what truth is, as well as what the actual truth is. If that makes sense, they may not be the same, and one can be used against the other, as we're seeing today. I believe that we're seeing intentional confusion for the reasons of plausible denial. But think about this: if, for example, there was a news report or a report that Ebola was out of control, and think about how this could be managed to bring down the economy. Think about how this could be managed to have the people, meaning the masses, call for restrictions of travel. Can you imagine? Here we are talking about being against the equivalent of or de facto martial law, yet calling for martial law travel restrictions based on a perception of what we believe to be true. So the danger, this is, to me, the evil danger that this represents is just exquisite. To me, it's exquisite. And I don't mean exquisite in a good way. Think about how this could be managed. I mean, this is kind of like that Innocence of Muslims video that was blamed on the Benghazi attack. For a while, at least for the first several hours, if not days, wasn't the perception of the uninitiated masses, wasn't there a perception that this could have been the cause of this attack? Some people, right away, they said, no, it's definitely not. Obviously, those in the know, our audience, smarter than the average bear, paying attention to what things, but see, to control the masses. Couldn't this be used to control the masses on a larger scale? I think so. And that's why I brought that up earlier. So you can run the numbers any way you want them, and well, and I do believe it is extremely dangerous, and I believe it is manufactured, and I believe it is for population control. But I also have to say, look, it's got collateral effects that people have to look at, and those collateral effects could have us yelling for martial law. And wouldn't it be a lot easier to have
It gets me doing that.
Oh, well.
But no, I know what you mean. When the average citizen, the average unintelligent or uninformed citizen has their feathers ruffled or their routine hindered by something, who knows what they'll call for.
Interesting. Well, all of this together, certainly, all of this we have to pay very close attention to. I want to bring something. This is totally unrelated, but for those following the Benghazi hearings, the Senate Select Committee on Benghazi, as well as the developments about Benghazi, there was a new Benghazi indictment that was released on Tuesday. Federal prosecutors won an 18-count indictment against Benghazi attacker, or the alleged Benghazi attacker, Ahmed Abu Khattala. I don't know how many people have seen this. Khattala, that's the indictment charges him with leading the assault that killed Stevens and the three others. And this does now qualify him for the death penalty, conveniently so. Was
this the same person who was blamed initially?
Well, this is the guy, folks. This is the guy that was able to elude capture by having tea with journalists and, living his life normally. And of course, meanwhile, this mega manhunt by our military was, and our intelligence operatives was on for him, and he's having tea and crumpets with people from the BBC and I shouldn't say BBC, but British and other journalists. So yeah, this is a guy. This is Khattala, who reportedly orchestrated plans to attack this CIA compound. And it's interesting because the indictment does reference that he orchestrated the plans to attack this. The wording is interesting. To attack the diplomatic compound, believing it to be a CIA outpost. Now think about that, folks. What did we write? What did we talk about right after Benghazi? Right after we identified this as a CIA outpost or a CIA compound involved in gun running. So this is important. At the very least, it's important because it does implicate the CIA, Western intelligence, Saudi, Qatar, UK, French, this multinational gun running operation, weapons running operation headed by the United States, headed by the Obama-Clinton team. And Clinton must be held accountable, Hillary and Bill both, but Hillary in particular because of her position as Secretary of State. So this new indictment, and I'll end here very quickly, but this new indictment, and this was handed up, folks, into the Federal District Court in Washington. This really closes it puts the final nail in the renegade in chief in any claim, actually, including that by Susan, what's her name, Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton and John O'Brien and others, that the attack was a reaction to a video that mocked Islam, innocence of Muslims. Instead, again, and I'm going to drive this home, instead, this indictment details Khattala's orchestrated plans to attack the diplomatic compound, believing it to be a CIA outpost. Where did he get this information? If you look at Khattala, and Khattala was deeply involved in I want to be careful how I say this, not because I just want to be technically accurate. He certainly knew what was taking place at this unmarked compound in Benghazi. And it's interesting that early on he gave interviews to American reporters, he gave interviews, as I said, to British reporters, and by the way, the select committee, and I misspoke earlier if I or accidentally misled people. The Senate Select Committee on Benghazi did not or has not yet commented on the indictment as of today. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Certainly, this is not good news for Hillary Clinton, and I don't know, maybe the casinos in Vegas are running book on how long Mr. Khatallah survives in prison.
You mentioned Susan Rice. Did you see her latest comment? Another stunning statement from Susan Rice. She went on TV and talked about how Turkey is working with the United States in stopping the ISIS strategy, the strategy to stop ISIS. And Charles Kraiheimer really took her to task, saying Susan Rice should not go on television anymore. He says, I have a little advice for Ambassador Rice. She could be the best advisor Obama ever had. She could be an international strategist of Kissingerian proportions, but she shouldn't go on television. It just doesn't work. It's totally inexplicable that the National Security Advisor, whose job it is to be the conduit of all information coming various foreign policy agencies, the one to coordinate and consolidate all of that should go out on television and announce to the world this very critical agreement, then within hours have Turkey say it's not true. It's just not true. It's also that now we have a dispute with the Turks over what she said rather than negotiating details on the cooperation between the two nations. So, she came out and stated that Turkey was cooperating when really they denied the U.S. Ability to use any military bases in Turkey. And there is a rift. Right. If you look at the article I think it's still on the main article from the Times of Israel today, there is an article here about the Mid-Eastern countries who are involved in battling Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon overwhelmingly reject ISIS and the U.S. The new poll shows jihadist group has very little backing in coalition countries, but Washington also gets very low ratings. And they're just fed up with the American war machine. At the same time, this ISIS, it seems to me that this coalition of Arab nations is about as happy with ISIS as they are the United States, from what this report reads. And what does that say about us, who the country that used to step in when no other countries would, or be the saviors of the people who were being attacked, killed, whatever the persecution, wherever it came from, we would step in and be the people to right the wrong. Now they don't even want. They're just like, get out of here. You're causing just as much problem.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and I think it's important for us, the listeners of this audience. Look, we have to understand what is shaping the politics, the geopolitics in the Middle East, including but not limited to Turkey, as well as NATO, for example. And I think what we're going to see is the Turkey leaving NATO and going full blown onto the Russian side, and that's a cumbersome way of actually saying that, but I think you get it.
You can see the Russian-Turkey alliance that is forming. Germany also, and don't forget what V talks about when I asked him, what would really make the BRICS nations or the U.S. dollar collapse, and he said Germany entering into a new currency agreement, denouncing the dollar.
Well, that's a goal all along, folks. I mean, the major goal. There are a number of major goals, but I mean the big one, of course, the one world government, the one world currency, the one world religion. Are we not seeing all of this take place? And I think if we look back, using the Bible in one hand, I suppose, or one arm, and have using the Bible as the lens in which we view current events, and understanding the playbook of the globalists, that being the creation of this one world, this new world order, having the three components: the financial, the political, and the religious side of things. If we look at everything through those two filters, those prisms, well, are we not seeing this expeditious or this exponential rush toward these objectives? And I think we are. I really do. So, if we toss, no matter what it is, Turkey, ISIS, Ebola, all of this together, we have to understand what's taking place, because the globalists, and this is something else, doing the research, the globalists, for example, are also Satanists. What more can I tell you? They're Luciferian Satanists, plain and simple. Those are the globalists. The globalist facilitators are those who hope for a seat at the globalist table and acquiesce to the wishes of the globalist elite power structure. So in order to filter out and identify what we're seeing, and to correctly, and I believe this is a key, to correctly understand whether it's Ebola, whether it's the Middle East geopolitics, we have to filter the news through the filter of biblical prophecy and also through the playbook of the globalist agenda. By the way, Satan is not, in no way, shape, or form, Satan is not creative. And that's why, of course, counterfeits everything that God has done. So the satanic
great imitator.
Exactly. So we're looking at this. We're looking at kind of nothing new under the sun, the same playbook. But again, I believe it's very critical for us to look at everything through the Holy Bible as well as the playbook of the globalists. And somebody had sent me an email. I did not see this. Glenn Beck apparently on his show today used spaghetti and chocolate sauce to indicate just how quickly Ebola can spread. Now, the segment was both hilarious.
Where are you reading that from?
The Blaze.
Oh. I don't know how...
Sorry about that.
Demonstrating...
Well, I was going to say it was both hilarious. This, according to The Blaze, it was both hilarious and horrifying. Well, I'm not. To me, I'm not so sure about the hilarious part. Sorry about that. I'm not so sure about the hilarious part.
I haven't been listening to him too much, but he was getting in a tendency there to start. Really, they were joking around about stuff that was not stuff you should joke about, and they were joking way too much. I don't know. It's been a while since I've caught a show, but I remember a case in, I think it was in Texas, where a teacher raped a student, a young girl student, and he received only a month in jail or something like that. And they did a whole hour of just laughing and making up different jokes. I mean, there's a time to joke, and then there's a time to state the facts and opinions in a manner that's respectful. How is demonstrating that how body fluids can spread, or it's like taking a watermelon and smashing it on the concrete and saying, well, if an Ebola victim jumps off a 10-story building and you're standing on the sidewalk, this is how you could get it. It has no intellectual value. It has no factual relevance, and it's inappropriate.
Well, when I went to The Blaze and looked at this, and I want to thank Ken for sending this to me.
I'm the last person who should be saying anything about inappropriate, but you know what I mean.
Well, no.
It's just...
I think you're right, Joe. I do because thanks, Ken from Albuquerque, listening live. Thank you, sir, for sending this to me. Here's the deal. Apparently, just let me map this out for you, and then what you said, I think, is extremely important. Imagine Beck, his co-host, that Stu guy, throwing handfuls of spaghetti to simulate projectile vomiting. Okay. Let's see here. Beck dressed exactly as the nurses reportedly did, commenting on how much of himself was exposed to, his skin and such. I understand that. Then that Stu guy started throwing spaghetti and chocolate sauce to simulate projectile vomiting and explosive diarrhea. Duncan exhibited. Yeah, I sorry, folks. I don't know whether I lack a sense of humor
No.
at times.
I'm always looking for something to laugh at, and it's definitely inappropriate the way that certain things have been handled, certain stories. But I mean, you have to have a sense of humor.
Oh, sure. We can't take ourselves seriously, all the time. But really, I mean, yeah, I understand. I do understand the point that he was attempting to make. I just don't like the delivery of the point. I guess maybe.
And he could have been, making fun of the whole media hype and the discombobulation from the administration and government bureaucracy that's going on. But still, I mean, it does. If you get too involved in these stories, and as you said, if you get emotionally wrapped up in this, it can drive you to do weird things, whether out of fear or out of frustration, or it can turn you mad, literally.
Extremely right.
Let's go to a break, and we're going to come back with your calls only after this quick commercial break. Ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Wednesday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. One quick announcement before we take your phone calls. Go to our website at hagmannandhagmann.com, and on the left-hand side there's a big red banner, a world turned upside down, decoding the dramatic new signs hastening the Lord's return. It is an advertisement for a conference, a prophecy conference, that is going to be taking place November 14th through the 15th in Columbus, Ohio. Dizdar will be there, Bill Salas. We will be there, and we'll also be speaking Dave Dovenmeyer, Gary Winkleman, John Howler, Greg Evenson, Douglas Woodward, Bill Koenig, and a few others. It's going to be a fantastic time. So go to the Hagmann&Hagmann.com.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk you, and we're getting some audio feedback here in the studio. It sounds like we're in a canyon. But anyway, I just got this note that Rick Wiles from True News, he's going to be featured via video feed from his offices in Florida. I think that's been verified.
Yeah, and we're also going to be, we're not going just to attend, we're going to be presenters there as well. So looking forward to that. I think we're going to do a live show from there. And then there's a couple of question and answer that we'll be involved with too. I have to look at the itinerary again, but there's a few areas where we will be talking. So it's a great line.
I believe we're going to be assisting in the Q&A panel. So in other words, kind of coordinating that. That's from the latest sheet I got just moments or hours ago. So it's going to be fun. So, folks, we'd love to meet you November 14th and 15th. That is a month from now. And hey, it's not that expensive, and it's probably within if you're listening to my voice and you're in North America, it's probably within a day's drive of wherever you might be at. In fact, Columbus, I think, according to what Dave Dovenmeyer said, is 2/3 of the population in America live within a day's drive of Columbus, Ohio. So go figure. That'd be great to meet you and sit down, and I'll even buy you a cup of coffee or your drink of choice. I was just envisioning that in my head. I'm not sure I can actually do that, but we'd like to do that if possible. Love to meet you.
All right, let's go to the phones. We're going to go first to area code 775. 775, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And that 775, are you there? All right.
Boy, I don't know if we're having issues, but I can hear.
I know.
Let's
try another call. We're going to go to area code 404. 404. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 404. All right. Third time's a charm. Area code 423. 423. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, fellas. How you doing?
Pretty hobbled today, apparently, but we're doing okay. What's on your mind?
First of all, I got to come out and I got to reproof Steve Quayle with his little Noah's Ark genealogy theory here. You know, the flood story is not so much about all that. The whole boat, it's about God wants you to have a yacht. No, I'm just playing.
I was actually thinking about where I was going to take that or where I was going to respond to that. Okay. Go ahead.
I would just like to say, believe it or not, when y'all had Eric John Phelps on, when he made that little comment about Washington being killed by his doctor there, Alex Jones just came out and told the same thing. And I thought it was
we kind of like
a little shot in the wind.
It's interesting. The stories around Washington, and folks, you can read about this. And caller, thanks for bringing that up. I did not get a chance to hear. Was that today that Alex Jones said that? Or?
No, actually, it was probably 5 weeks ago, maybe.
Okay. All right. And by the way, Alex Jones is fantastic. I mean, he's been on the forefront of a lot of things. Yeah, this Washington, George Washington, the documentation around it is so relevant to today. Joe and I were talking about Washington's visions that he had, and things of that nature. So, isn't that interesting how this is kind of coming together? What do you think about that?
It is.
I mean, what do you think about that premise, or that allegation of death by doctor?
Well, I'm friends with Eric John Phelps. I've heard that before to a certain extent. I didn't know it went that far, but you guys should try having him on one more time. I thought he was just shooting the breeze, but now I'm not so sure.
Oh, I get it. So when we bring him on, and now I'm kidding around with you, but when we bring him on and he says something, it's not so sure. But when Alex Jones says, has him on and he says it, or
no, actually, I'm the one who got Eric John Phelps on for you guys.
Yeah, I know. I'm very familiar with that. In
fact,
fact,
this voice sounded familiar. It's just Tom. Or
Tom. Yeah. So no, that would be that might be warranted to have him back on.
You cut out on me.
Yeah, you muted yourself. Oh, or there's a long delay. We're having audio issues apparently. So.
No, I didn't mute myself. It was somebody else.
You cut out you said maybe we should, and that was all came across.
Oh, yeah, I just said maybe you should have it. Well, I just thought he was shooting wind there until Alex said, and I'm like, there really must be something to it, I just didn't think Alex would verify the story like that.
There is an alternative history, and there's an alternative history that we're not privy to, and we should know that. So, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just listening, and you called my number, but I just want to say hi, God bless, and y'all have a good evening, and you got the best listening audience.
God bless you, Tommy. You take it easy. It's good to hear from you.
You guys too. Hey, you too. Bye-bye.
Have a good night. All right.
It's suddenly, and let me explain this to the listening audience. For whatever reason, we are experiencing about a 3 to 7 second delay.
The 10-second delay too. I don't know if you're getting a delay from me, but when you talk, it's rough. All right, we're going to go to area code 717. I believe this is in the capital of our state, Pennsylvania. 717, you're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Good evening, Doug and Joe. This is Greg. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Greg.
Not bad. Just want two things. I want to talk to you about Ebola, but I'd like to thank you for Monday night's show. Yesterday, I got my tickets for the conference. My wife is from Dublin, Ohio, so we're going back to her home for the conference. I think you're going to enjoy being in that area. Good restaurants right near the Parks and Rec place. And actually, it's a really nice venue. I think people who are on the decision-making process of whether to go, it's a great place. Dublin is a very nice town. Good restaurants, good hotels. It's a great venue, and I think people really enjoy being there. Besides just the fellowship, I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, we went to eat at the Microtel, or at the Motel 6, I think. I'm not sure. They
I don't think they have those kinds of hotels in Dublin, but not that I remember. But there's really good hotels there, and I think that if you want a good dinner, you go down to the Brazen Head Inn, and they have some of the best fish and chips in the area. It's right downtown, about almost walking distance from the Parks and Recs place. Look, Ebola. I'm retired military, guys. 23 years. I'm a retired military nurse. I lived and breathed as part of medical readiness, biohazard, NBC, chemical warfare training. I wrote policies because I ran a pilot unit for the Air Force for critical care transport dealing with policies related to fevers of unknown origin and how to transport these patients. This Ebola thing here in this country is a flipping mess. Right now I work in a frontline emergency department. Our training is abhorrent. Literally, it's abhorrent. I took a look at the information that was brought to us yesterday after a CDC conference call that everybody called in on from all over the country. And I looked at it and I going, something, I'll refuse to take care of the patients. I'll walk out. You can fire me. I don't care. I'm not going to endanger myself. I'm not going to endanger my family and my loved ones. They still are wanting us to work with paper gowns, paper booties, N95 masks, goggles, and face shields. I am used to working at a much higher level of containment, personal containment, at MOP level 4 when dealing with biohazards of this nature. I used to have to actually train several times a year in these suits. It's very arduous work. We are not prepared.
Okay, so all right. So we can consider ourselves talking to as much of an expert or an experienced individual based on your military training in the military. So
definitely more
in that
understanding
regard,
than the director of the CDC is more knowledge, I would say.
I doubt he ever climbed into a biolevel hazard Ford suit.
Right. Whereas you have direct experience on this. I've got two questions for you. Number one, when you said, I ain't doing it this way, I'd like to get your, what was their response? And number two, do you believe that this will turn into a pandemic based on your experience with biohazards? So those two questions are on the table for you.
The first one, and then I'll expand on it. The first one, the people that were around me when I said this and it was brought to me, the nurse manager became very quiet. And in speaking with my peers, there won't be anybody working in the emergency departments. We'll have mass walkouts in the hospitals. This healthcare system will deteriorate because people don't have the confidence. They know. They're not, most of the nurses, I would say a majority of the nurses, are smart enough and have the critical thinking because of the education backgrounds to know that they are being fed a line of bull. When you have one nurse, two nurse, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have a few more people out of that Dallas hospital that are going to come down with it. People are going to really start assessing what is important in their lives. And most of my peers have shook their heads, and they're not going to do it. And the emergency room doctors aren't going to do it. They have many, many years. They know this thing will fall apart. But on your second question related to a pandemic, we don't need a pandemic to get to that situation. I think the level of mistrust of the CDC and the NIH. You know what's really interesting? Have you guys made an observation about this whole thing? I have. I've asked a question, and people just kind of like, you can see the wheels turning in the back of their brain. Okay, Friedman has been the happy face on all this stuff, right? He's the head of the CDC. Where in God's name is the Surgeon General of the United States? He sits over top of the NIH and sits over top of the CDC. Where is the Surgeon General?
Yeah,
we don't have one.
We touched on this last night. Isn't it protocol?
Exactly. That's what. There's an
Surgeon General to handle these things, not the president.
There's an acting Surgeon General, but there's no confidence even in the acting Surgeon General. Even though there's someone who isn't occupying that seat at this time, there's always someone who's acting. Like you brought up the Cloward and Piven strategy. You know something? We don't need a full-blown pandemic to bring this country to its knees economically in our healthcare system. All you have to do is overwhelm the system a little bit and install the fear, and you will see the wheels come off the bus.
I think that's what we're seeing right now, or at least the early stages of that right now.
Oh, yeah. The early stages are there. When you see the responses that you got from the National Nursing United, I never heard of them before this thing, but this big union, and you've heard some of the other organizations that have come out. The nurses are not, we don't get paid a lot. Do okay. I'm not complaining, but it's not like we're, making a whole heck of a lot of money that we'd be out there willing to sacrifice our lives. We're not getting hazardous duty pay. The other thing I want to bring up to you guys, you were talking about some books. You really need to read Richard Preston's book, Demon in the Freezer. Are you familiar with Richard Preston?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
His book, Demon in the Freezer, outlines what went on with the biological warfare machinery within this country and also within the Soviet Union. But he also outlines how easy it is to do. That's the scary part. Second, this thing with the military upsets me to no end. What's going on in West Africa. The hospital that I work at, we actually have a nurse that's going to deploy for 3 months there. I'm very upset. If you know anything about the 1918 flu, the Spanish influenza, can either of you tell me what brought it here to the United States and how it grew out of control in the United States?
Okay, you cut out. I'm not sure of your question.
I said,
you're going to have to ask that.
With relationship to the 1918 flu, do either of you know what it was that really set the 1918 flu off in this country?
Well, there was another different theories about the epidemic's origins.
Well, it's not the origin. It's not the origin. What?
Kansas, right? I mean, one historian has said that, and I'm kind of inclined to believe this, that the likely point of origin for the 1918 flu originated perhaps in Kansas. What is your theory, or what do you?
Well, no, the flu really the year before, the flu was really bad over in Europe. That's where our troops were at. Our troops came back, and the biggest outbreaks, the initial biggest outbreaks in this country were at Fort Devon, Massachusetts, where you can go and see mass graves, and Fort Dix, New Jersey. That's why the Army Pathology Department down at Walter Reed, down in Washington, D.C., and Silver Springs, Maryland, was able to reconstruct, before they actually got the really good genetic material from up in Alaska, was able to partially reconstruct the genomic markers for the Spanish influenza, because they actually went back to the wax tissue samples, the wax-sealed tissue samples that they took out of the patients when they were doing the pathology on the soldiers that died at Fort Dix and Fort Devon. So my point is, in all this, is here we are, we're taking 3,000 to 4,000 U.S. troops, we're throwing them in the hot zone, and even though they're trained in NBC, you're going to have mistakes. You're going to have accidents. And now today they came out, they haven't disclosed the location, but it was in the news. They've actually set up a base for quarantine outside of Washington, D.C., somewhere in the Virginia, Maryland area. I suspect it's down at Fort Detrick in Frederick, Maryland, along Route 15. That's where I suspect they're going to be bringing them back to, because of their containment facilities. But, why are we doing this? Why are we taking our troops over there? Why are we exposing them to the Ebola? And then we're going to have to bring them back and treat them in this country, and we're going to be bringing more people back, exposing more healthcare workers, and running larger risks in one of the largest population centers of the country, Washington, D.C., to having this crap spread around.
No, I totally agree with you on that. That's all very valid issues.
Guys, this is like, something I have to break it down into two things. Number one, it's either nefarious, which we can't prove, or number two, it's amateur hour, which we can absolutely say we got a bunch of amateurs down there.
I'm more inclined to believe something nefarious is behind this, because of the lack. If you look at the executive level, the renegade in chief and his band of merry people, to me, there's a little bit more of a disconnect there, as if, look, I've got no control over this, so why should I bother? It's almost, if behavioral analysis of Obama doesn't project incompetence. It projects foreknowledge or knowledge that we're not that we might not be privy to. That's just my view based on that.
Well, I keep tilting back and forth between nefarious and incompetence, amateurs. I think for the sake of the argument, maybe the people below him, he's put amateurs in place, people that are easily manipulated. Those above him, above the people who are at the policy level, I don't know, possibly nefarious. I hate to think that, but you and I well know that is all you have to do is continuously follow what's going on, and I guess you have to assume there's some nefarious issues going on here. And the way this thing is being handled is just it's just absolutely mind-boggling when you train for this all your life like I have. And something, I'm not a big wheel. I did my time in the military, did all the training. I don't, I have some credentials behind my name, but I don't got all of them. And I can figure this out. and the people that they've hired to put in place to ensure our safety are just one big foobar after another, man. One big foobar after another.
Okay, before we cut you loose, just to illustrate my position on this, you, knowing what you know at your level, if we put you in a position of power or policy power, the ability where you would have the ability to change things, institute procedures, and you did not do them, would we ascribe incompetence to you or perhaps something else? Given your level of knowledge.
Medical negligence and malfeasance.
Okay. Well, malfeasance can be criminal. Misfeasance,
yes,
malfeasance, whatever.
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
case, I believe
and
it
gentlemen, I'm so looking forward to seeing you all on the 14th and 15th. And thanks again for being part of this.
Hey, thank you, and I'm you'll be the one dressed in the biocontainment.
Yeah, I'll be here in my Devo suit.
All right. Hey, we'll see you at the conference. God bless.
Take care.
Thanks for the call. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right. Great call. We're going to move right along here and go to area code 305. 305, you are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. All right, 786. You are live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug. Hey, Joe. How you doing tonight?
Very well.
Yeah, doing great. Can you hear us?
Yeah. We're here.
Yeah, I can. Okay, yeah, I can hear you. It looks like there's a little delay or something going on. Can you hear me okay now?
There's a big delay.
Because you're kind of fading out.
In fact, our words will reach you sometime on Thursday or Friday. I'm sorry about this. I don't know what's going on with our system, but go ahead and you're live, so just go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I completely agree with you, Doug, that Barack Obama is not a buffoon. He knows exactly what he's doing here with this Ebola, or Obola, as I like to call it. And this is being orchestrated and scripted. He did want this into the United States. He did want Ebola. This is the false flag that a lot of people talk about. One thing I want to bring up, because I know that you guys like to talk about the symbology that's in the music, that's in like magazine covers and various forms of media, how the Illuminati project their what they're doing through the media. And I want to call everybody's attention to a TV series that came out this summer. It started in June. It just ended for the season about 2 weeks ago. It was called The Strain. And it was a kind of a freaky vampire type of genre. It was about a vampire. But what happened was this vampire wasn't like a Count Dracula. It was they made him out to look just like a Nephilim. He was a giant, and he would transfer these worm-like virus into his victims to transform them into like zombie or like other vampires. And it acted like a virus, and it transformed people's DNA to become the carrier for and to go out and attack people and to keep the disease spreading. Now, that being aside, all of the sci-fi kind of and Dracula kind of thing, this was definitely an Illuminati message of what they were going to do to us. This was even before the Ebola really hit the screen or hit our radar here in the United States. We knew it was in Africa, but it was still kind of not really hitting home yet. They said in this thing, it came over on an airplane. This they brought this Dracula-type creature, this Nephilim, over from Europe, basically. But it came over on a plane, and then all the people were killed on this plane, or they thought they were killed. 4 came back to life. So you had kind of this whole thing where 4 people recovered from it, and then they turned into these creatures a little bit later on. The CDC helped to bring. There are people in the CDC that helped to bring it into New York City, and helped getting it spread across in New York City, and was lying to the public. There's only one good guy in the CDC, and they actually had the FBI. They sent the FBI out to catch him, and they demonized him and made him like the bad guy, while it was the CDC and a super rich corporation that wanted to have this Dracula guy, come over and spread the disease and start taking over. And at the end of the season, most of New York, and it happened in the fall, most of New York was already being transformed into these new creatures from this worm type of disease that was coming from this Nephilim Dracula character. And I mean, if you guys have the time, you need to watch this show, because it was laying out what they were going to do to us this summer before everything started hitting here in the last 2 weeks.
Have you ever been in New York City?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure when we were there, they were already half accomplished with that goal. I mean, it was
right.
It's just a world in and of itself. But no, what was the name of that show again? I missed that part.
It was on FX, and it was called The Strain. STRAIN, The Strain. And it would flash back to where this thing was involved with the Nazis, and there was a Nazi character that supposedly this Nephilim Dracula thing gave eternal life to, and was kind of like his caretaker coming over here. And it went back to talking about how what the Nazis were doing, and how they were kind of involved in it, and allowing this creature to feed on the Jewish prisoners while they were in prison, and transforming them over. It got down to the point in this show where, even just like Mike Adams said about a week ago, saying that this Ebola could get supercharged with the winter, because this is the first time Ebola is going to encounter a colder climate. And since it has a lot of characteristics like influenza A that the U.S. Department of Army Bioweapons Lab figured out in 2006 and wrote a paper on it, and that's been on the internet at several locations, and y'all probably talked about it, that it could actually, if it's not fully airborne now, it could actually become a lot more airborne and actually supercharge in the colder weather. And the other thing that people are really not talking about is that the people in the African nations that are being affected, they've kind of had experience with Ebola before. So you got some generational herd immunity over there, what they call herd immunity. I'm not trying to denigrate the people over there, but they call it herd immunity. You kind of sometimes have a little bit of generational immunity just from the fact that if a society has been exposed to a disease before, and now the American people, this is just like when some of the settlers that when they first came over to America brought smallpox to the Native Americans, and they had never had it before, and it devastated the Native Americans. And we may be dealing with a situation like this, and the Lord's in charge of everything. So everything, He might tap this. The Lord might stop this, or unless it's our time of judgment, then we might have to go through this. But there's a lot of factors that the CDC is covering up. Of course, you guys have already talked about that they knew it was airborne back in 1989. It was on that Nova documentary called The Plague Fighters, that they already knew that this thing could be airborne. They basically are the CDC and the Obama administration is a clear and present danger to the American people. And I think that's something, I think that all of us need to escalate. I'm not calling for violence, but we need to escalate that these people be taken from power. We need to escalate our call that they be taken from power immediately, because this is endangering our children and our grandchildren. And this is not playtime anymore. They're playing an end game on us, and I think all of us need to get up to speed on what level of the game they're ready to take us to. And I think that we need, as mighty men of valor that God calls us, we need, all of us Christian men and women need to stand up and say enough is enough.
Man, God bless you for that. What an eloquent statement on that. Absolutely, I totally agree with you on that. Caller, thank you so very much for all of that.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a good night, and God bless you.
Yeah. All right. Folks, I want to just touch on something. Joe, I want to touch on something I said earlier about the symbolism, about the multidimensionality of everything.
You send it through the content system so we can approve or disapprove if it goes out.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm currently the department head of all content today, as the board says.
I see.
So any content you want to get out over the air should have been cleared through me. I guess I'll let you slide this time, but next
all
time
right. Well, thank you, Herr Joe. Thank you for that. One thing I want to touch on, and I think this is extremely important to recall, remember the shows with Nathan Leal. Remember the shows that we had talking, whether it was just us or Nathan or with others, about the 2012 London Olympics, the symbology there. Now, what I'd like you folks to do, those, especially those who kind of raised an eyebrow in questioning our judgment, or what we were talking about, saying, "Oh man, those guys are out to lunch." I'm going to go back to the 2012 Olympics ritual in London, and you'll note that there were images there or ceremonies there invoking like a childbirth, for example, and we presume that to be associated with Kate and William's son or daughter at the time, and also a pandemic. Now, remember this? If you recall the imagery of the 2012 ceremony of the Olympics, it had nothing to do with the Olympics. It was so out of place, we were scratching our heads. Remember the image of the giant baby head in front of the pandemic scene. What do we see? Striking our younger people, the Entero D68 virus, I believe it is, that originated in Central America, and that affects the young people, toddlers, infants, younger people with polio-like symptoms. Okay. Well, we saw this giant baby head in front of this group of people dressed up as medical practitioners, including nurses, in the 2012 Olympics ceremony. Okay. Now, is that something? Well, I don't know. But then you've got additional creepiness with the images, and you can find pictures on the internet of this. We talked about the sick children that represent this pandemic, the black and white costumes in the opening ceremony. That included newspaper headlines such as pandemic and other things related to sickness on a massive scale. It's interesting how this all plays out. Of course, you've got eugenicist and philanthropist, in quotes, Bill Gates celebrating the effective use of vaccinations or vaccines that could call world population. What did he mean by that? And the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and George Soros combining, and of course, earlier in the program we mentioned the connection to the not just vaccines, but also to a laboratory, a virology laboratory. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous. If it does, well, that's fine. But I would urge everyone to take a look at what we saw in the 2012 London Olympic ceremony with respect to pandemics, the symbology, and really the psychotic, I don't even know how to do symbolism, the New Age symbolism, the occult symbology, the rituals, the associations with satanic activities. And remember, the closing ceremony, when every athlete or every country took home a petal, if you will, one of those petals from the cauldron to their home country. Could that have signified, could have the ability to touch all countries? I'm just asking the question. Was there a message by those who would like to control humanity, by people who love to create order from chaos? Is this the bigger picture that we're seeing? Whether it be Ebola or ISIS or whatever the threat, the collapse of the U.S. dollar? I think on a symbolic level, we have to take a good hard look at what we saw at the Olympic ceremonies. We have to revisit that. And I think that you'll see, you just search for images on the internet of the 2012 Olympic ceremonies, and I think you'll be surprised. If you didn't see it or catch it the first time around, I think you'll be surprised. The pandemic play or the symbolism that was shown in those ceremonies. Coincidence? Just some sort of wild coincidence? How can it? Perhaps since we know that the power brokers, the satanic Luciferians, have to inform us of their intent. Perhaps that's what it is, or what it was. Search it for yourself, folks.
Sorry, I was busy typing. We got 10 minutes left in the show. We're going to do the lightning round of calls, so we'll probably get one or two, but that's okay. We're going to go to area code 617. 617, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe and Doug, how you doing? Yeah, kind of bad news, huh? Something to think about. Thank you for laying that down on us. The things that came to my mind, now, if this was just a one-time thing, it would be coincidence. I'm thinking that Doc Marquis has a Illuminati card that probably shows exactly this. But in addition to that, they've been programming us for years in movies. You have Seven Monkeys pandemic that comes out, and Dan Brown wrote a book a couple of years ago or a year ago, ironically called Inferno. Now, this is about Dante's Inferno. It's a Dan Brown book. It didn't do too well, but it's about he calls the hero releases basically a pandemic on the whole population and calls the population. I just want to say that if it were once or twice, I'd say, yeah, maybe coincidence, but I don't think it's coincidence when you see it popping up again and again and again and again. So, I love you guys. You guys are great, and thanks for taking my call.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for that. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't. I think Joe. I think we have to put on we have to look beyond the box in which we're being pushed into. Look over the top of the box and to see the bigger picture.
And
the whole. Go ahead.
the child thing could also relate to the whole Aleister Crowley Aeon of Horus of the conquering child. So that's going to more OTO, occult stuff. But that's all I had to say. And that's
very,
it. And,
yeah, very good. All right. So sorry about the delay, and sorry about the cumbersome conversational aspects of this. But God bless you, caller. Thank you so very much.
Bless you all.
We have the best.
We do have the best audience, but it's funny. We have a delay between my dad and myself. We have a delay between the callers, my dad, and myself. Some of what you say doesn't go out in my headphones, and some of the callers, what they say doesn't come out in your headphones. It's odd.
Right.
I've never. Usually the whole system just shuts down at this point.
It's almost as if we're playing amateur hour here with tin cans and string, like when we were kids. This is insane.
Hey, I'm not ashamed of amateur hour. I don't remember going to school for journalism, so.
Well,
and the tin can and strings probably has better sound quality on a consistent basis than. I don't know for the listener's sake, but I have to figure out how to invert an extra can and string.
I don't know what else to do. I mean, our string is a huge cable of coming out of our studio for this. So
you know what we're gonna have to do? We might have to do something like Pastor Paul Begley does, and use our website to stream the live show as well.
We can do that.
But anyway, let's get one more call in here as we're coming down to the end of the show. We're going to go to area code 862. 862, thanks for holding. You're our last caller for the night. What's going on?
Praise the Lord. This is Joe and Doug. I'm the lady that Brother W had responded to, and I got to tell you, what Brother W said was an exact answer to my prayer, because I didn't want, my prayer was that it would not be about me or trying to get Brother Jackson in a gotcha moment or to trip him up. It was done in love and from the depth of my heart, everything W said just confirmed that. And it was such a blessing for me to hear those words from him. And I've got to tell you, there is, the Lord has let me know what my goal in life was, what my part in the body is. And that's helping saints, almost to the exclusion of all else. I'm to help saints when they need anything, no matter where they are in the world, whatever, here, it doesn't matter. That's what I do, and I've been doing it since 1999. The Lord is blessed. And the Lord told me, in reference to this Ebola, and when I send out my emails, I always send them out as saints, because I'm always addressing the saints. Because when it comes down to it, guys, there's only two kinds of people in the end. There's saints and ain'ts. That's just where it's going to come down to it.
Good.
Is you is or is you ain't a saint. But he did tell me in reference to the Ebola, he said to take the 4 thieves oil. That's what got people through the bubonic plague. He said take that and add a double measure of myrrh and honey. And if you do some research and check the healing properties of all the ingredients, especially myrrh. Myrrh is one of the 3 best things in the world, because when Christ was born, God, his Father, sent him the 3 things he needed: gold for all the temporal things, frankincense,
and myrrh. And I'm sorry to finish your answer for you, caller, but we're up against the end of the program, so we're going to have to let you go. But excellent points, and thanks for closing out our show tonight with your call. We'll hear from you again soon. God bless you. You have a great evening. I hate to have to do that, cutting us short, but we only have a minute left of airtime, and with the delay and lags, hopefully we can get our closing out in that amount of time. But no, in all seriousness, it is, what we're seeing today is more of a fear mongering, a fear testing, beta test, seeing what triggers go off where, indicators, sentiments of the different public. What is the reaction from the public to what we're seeing today, and what is the hype given by the media, and what's the agenda of...
Not to diminish the lethality of Ebola or the serious nature.
Right.
I mean, I understand what you're saying.
The pretext is that Ebola will set for them to do other nefarious things. We're going to have to be diligent. We're going to have to keep our eyes open. But look, we're told that famines, pestilences, tribulations will be coming upon this earth in the last days. We are in the last days, whether that lasts for 30 years or 10 minutes. We're here, and it's just going to get worse. So we're going to have to really draw close to the Lord and the Holy Spirit for our information. We can absorb all the information around us, but we take everything to prayer, whether you hear it from me or whether you hear it from your dog in the morning when you're taking him for a walk. Take it to the Lord in prayer.
Very well said. And folks, once again, I'd like to remind you about the conference, Columbus, Ohio. Going to be there November 14th and 15th. And also, Joe, you've got the sheet for Augusto Perez's conference. That's next weekend in Idaho. So please visit the Augusto Perez's website as well to get information about the Idaho conference.
TheAppearance.com.
Right. With that, we're out of here. God bless. Stay safe until tomorrow.